What's up, everybody? Good morning. Welcome to Philly with Jon Marks. I'm already having microphone problems here. This damn thing. Philly with Jon Marks on PHLY is always presented by BetParks. Tonight, Philly on the road in Memphis is a 3.5-point road favorite. That's right, they're a favorite. The worst record in the NBA. Bet more than the score. Bet player points, rebounds, assists, and more. Birds, 3-point road favorites at Los Angeles. Man, a lot going on here and going on in the BetParks app. Yes, they are favorites tonight. Your 76ers. More on that coming up in a second. But, does it ever stop with this team? Does it ever stop? Remember last year what happened with the Eagles? They were 1-6. I got to fix this here before I go any further. All right, that's better. Remember, they were best team in the NFL, and then, boom, they finished the season losing 6 of 7. And I'd said at the time, and I said it all offseason, that it was clear that this was more than X's and O's, that there was a problem going on in the locker room. You don't go from 10-1 to your season completely imploding like that happens without there being some type of internal problems, right? And I felt the same way with the 76ers this year, and I think we're finding out exactly what was going on, or we did find out what's going on. So, at some point with the Sixers, and the point is right now, the rubber is going to meet the road. And Joel Embiid has been called out. He's been called out by Tyrese Maxey, not publicly, but the fact that it goes public, he's been called out. And now everybody knows what was going on. There hasn't been any denials. The Sixers didn't come out and say, oh, well, that's not true. No, everybody now is left staring at Joel Embiid and saying, what the hell is going on, right? So by now what happened. Joel Embiid, and I'll just read here from what Shams put out here yesterday. The loss was the team's 4th in a row, sparking veteran guard Kyle Lowry to call for the meeting, a much-needed heart-to-heart and a call to action and urgency, sources told ESPN. Players and coaches held each other accountable and took fault in the start to the season. Maxey challenged Embiid to be on time to team activities, calling out the 2022-23 league MVP about being late, quote, for everything, and how it impacts the locker room from other players to the coaching staff. Sources briefed on the meeting told ESPN. Quote, Tyrese loves the big fella, but this is the elephant in the room, a person involved in the meeting told ESPN. Players told 76ers coach Nick Nurse that they want to be coached harder, and coaches in turn said they want players to practice with purpose and attention to detail. Embiid accepted the messages sent in the meeting, sources said, but he stated he's confused about what the 76ers are attempting to execute sometimes on the court. So he had excuses. He blamed. Embiid, who was listed doubtful most of Monday due to an illness, was not seen by most teammates and coaches throughout the day before appearing for warm-ups and playing in the game. So, we didn't know this. We hadn't heard that he's late for practices. We don't know if this is something that had been happening previously or this just started this year. I think you'd be foolish to think that this is something new. Here's the only difference. The Sixers aren't winning anymore. Sixers aren't winning regular season games anymore. When you're showing up and you're scoring 30 and giving 12 rebounds and you're winning 55, 54, 53 regular season games when you're the number 1 seed in the East, or you're a top 4 seed in the East, when you're winning games, this kind of stuff doesn't get out there. When you start the season 2-11, and maybe he is extra this year, maybe Joel is really in some type of a hole where he's showing up late for everything, as the quote was, late for everything, quote, for everything. But when you're 2-11, guess what? It doesn't happen. This is the first time Joel Embiid has not had success. The injury, a couple games back, he's looked like a shell of himself. He's not in shape. Everything that's happened this offseason in training camp and now into the start of the regular season clearly has frustrated 76ers players, 76ers management. Otherwise, this doesn't get out there like that. There was a lot of speculation on where this story came from. In fact, it was relatively weird to me, or really weird to me, that a lot of people were more focused on that and was angry that the story was leaked, thinking that the team leaked the story and, oh, those bastards, how could they do that to Joel? And I saw a lot of people saying, hey, well, Tyrese Maxey's repped by Clutch. Shams is a Clutch client. They put this out there to make Tyrese Maxey look good and to make Joel Embiid look bad. I believe this came from the 76ers, and it came from the 76ers for good reason. It's time. The rubber's going to meet the road. Does he respond to this, or does he mope and he's going to be traded? I think he responds. I hope he responds. But ultimately, he may end up moping if the Sixers don't succeed in the playoffs and he's going to be traded. I believe this is the last year of Joel Embiid in a 76ers uniform, because I don't think that they're good enough and that he's good enough and he's healthy enough and he's going to be able to make this work to where the Sixers make it to the Eastern Conference Finals or the Sixers make it to the NBA Finals. Back in 2000, Larry Brown wanted to trade Allen Iverson because Allen Iverson was late for practice. Allen Iverson didn't show up for practice, or he wasn't totally into practice. He was out late the night before at Fridays or Houlihan's drinking Coronas. He wasn't taking his practice seriously. He wasn't taking his job seriously. And they tried to trade him. And I believe it was Eric Montross that wouldn't allow a trade because he had a no trade clause that nixed the deal. Iverson stayed put. He committed more to his craft and to his profession, and the Sixers went on a magical run that got them to the NBA Finals against a great Lakers team, and the Sixers were right there with the Lakers. It was a really, really good team. And then from there, it kind of went back downhill, and a lot of the Iverson stuff came back, and he was gone a couple years later. Joel Embiid is at the same crossroads as Allen Iverson. He can take this criticism and he can say, you know what? I'm going to change and I'm going to prove them wrong. And this can be a true pivot point to the season where it rallies the team around each other. Where instead of, which is clear right now, the elephant in the room is Joel Embiid being late for everything, Joel Embiid being this and Joel Embiid being that. Well, guess what? That locker room has a problem with Joel Embiid's behavior and how seriously he's taking his profession. So Joel can say to what he didn't do, apparently in the meeting, was say, hey, this is all on me. And he said, oh, well, I don't know what's going on the floor half the time anyway. Or he can say, it's this person's fault, it's that person's fault. Oh, well, you know, it's all on me because I'm the best player on the team and I'm the highest paid player on the team, but, you know, there are other players on the team. He can take this and become motivated and change. Long term, he can do it on the short term, or he can just mope around and he'll get traded after the season. I think he's going to end up getting traded after the season because I think everything's going to blow up. My hope is that he takes this criticism and he changes, like Allen Iverson did in 2000, 2001. And it makes him a better player and it makes this team better. Because if these players were all on the same page and they were all pulling in the same direction, the coaching staff's affected by this. The players are affected by this. Ownership's affected by this. The front office affected by this. Joel Embiid sets the tone for everything that goes on with this franchise. He does every year. And if this is his behavior, and this has been his behavior for a while, then guess what? It's a big reason why they're not winning anything. You can't have your superstar when he sets the tone of being late or being out of shape, which we've heard about previously. Maybe this is new. Maybe it's not. I wanted to read Yaron Weitzman, who he writes for. He's an NBA writer. He has a book on the process, but he's an NBA reporter. And tanking to the top, the Philadelphia 76ers and their most audacious process in the history of professional sports. I've read it. An excerpt from that. It comes from the 2015 season. Stay with me here for a second. This is from the book. The Sixers spent the next week playing in Golden State, Phoenix, and Los Angeles before returning to Philadelphia. One afternoon that week, a few hours before a game at the Wells Fargo Center, Brett Brown was ushered into a large room. Nearly every member of the Sixers basketball staff was awaiting him. Why are we here? Brown asked. He knew the meeting was about Embiid, but he didn't understand why dozens of his colleagues felt compelled to meet with him in this sort of setting. One of the assistant coaches stood up, quote, "Coach, we're here because there's a problem with Joel. He's disrespected just about everyone in this room, and he's become a major distraction," end quote. Brown was livid. "Jesus Christ," he screamed. "You mean to tell me my entire staff is here and this is going on and no one told me?" He turned to Billy Lang, an assistant coach who he designated as his chief of staff. Billy, why the bleep didn't I know about this? Why wasn't this brought to my attention? I got the whole bleeping staff here for one guy, end quote. Lang believed he had tried passing along the staff's concerns. He tried reminding Brown. Bleep, quote, you didn't tell me. I'm sitting here and I've got my whole staff here. I've let everyone down, end quote. Brown promised to address the issues, but disciplinarian was never a role he was comfortable playing. A person who was present said, quote, even after that meeting, nothing changed. It was a bleeping circus. So back in 2015, as Tyler pointed out this morning when we were talking about it, and Tyler Zuli's with me here this morning, that's almost 10 years ago. So this is probably nothing new. If you're having problems going to practice and you're showing up for, quote, almost everything, that's a problem. And now that they're not winning, and now that Tyrese Maxey is a star in his own right and has the contract to prove it, and Paul George is here, the Sixers organization as a whole, if this has been going on behind the scenes, I believe has told Joel Embiid, listen, either you change or you're gone. Publicly hanging Joel Embiid out to dry by putting the story out there, if indeed this came from the 76ers, and I think it came from the 76ers, and I think it's a wise move by the 76ers. Now is the time. They've messed around too long with this. Other people are going to start losing their jobs. Nick Nurse is going to lose his job. Daryl Morey. If they keep losing, guess what? Daryl Morey is not the toast of the NBA as a GM, right? Like, everybody wants to win. And if Joel Embiid's not showing up, if he's not doing the minimum requirement of showing up on time and participating in all basketball activities, then what are we doing here? And it's another year of them not winning. And Joel Embiid is injured. And the whole fiasco with his injury stuff this training camp. And the more you talk to, the more you find out that was really all Joel Embiid driven. And the team's probably mad as freaking hell about it. And they've had enough. Everybody knows the talent. Here's one thing I'm gonna promise you this morning and going forward. I'm done talking about the talent of Joel Embiid. I'm done talking about how he's the most talented player in any sport that I may have ever seen in this town. For how big he is and the shooting touch that he has and the defensive presence and blah, 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 blah. I'm finished with it. I'm done with it. I am. It's time. It's time to say, hey, I'm ready to be a professional. I'm ready to go out and I'm ready to win a championship. And that's not something Joel Embiid clearly has ever done in this league. He's certainly not doing it now. So now's the time. Do you want to be here? Do you want to win a championship here? Do you truly care? Is it truly the most important thing on your professional mind? Because you're not acting like it. And guys like Tyrese Maxey, and guess what? A rookie that is taking Philadelphia by storm. Maybe he has always also given the Sixers confidence. Hey, do we really even need Joel Embiid? We can lose in the second round of the playoffs pretty much every year without him. They can win a playoff series without Joel Embiid. Not this year, not with Joel Embiid here, but if they constructed a roster without Joel Embiid on the team, they could make a roster that could lose in the playoffs in the second round every year. Jared McCain might make them feel a little bit more confident about that. So here's what's clear to me as we sit here on a Wednesday morning in November, 8 days away from Thanksgiving. The Sixers are 2-11, and I think a lot of people that are involved with the 76ers, the players, the coaches, management, and ownership realize that it's time for Joel Embiid to change or it's time to move on from him. And it's a matter of where we go from here. I want to play this. This is yesterday. The PHLY Sixers guys, and Devon's going to join us in about 10 minutes. And our headlines, which we're probably going to get to a little bit later in the show, which are normally brought to you by Glatt Hair Restoration and their amazing staff over there. GlattHairRestoration.com. You can see the results from me. So get over there, contact their hair team, 610-980-4000. DM me. I'll connect you with my people over there at Jon Marks Media. But Kyle and Derek and Devon yesterday, emergency. Was it an emergency or was it just their normal show?
No, I think it was just the regular show. Yeah.
The Sixers give you a lot of emergency stuff if you needed it. Here's those guys yesterday, and Devon's going to join us in 10 minutes. Here's what they had to say yesterday.
Darkest it has been for the fan base in quite a while.
And with real frustration.
And it would be so much worse if they weren't getting one of the best rookie performances of the season so far and look like they have a guy that might give them a bridge to a next era. Because what we're looking at right now, like, we can get into the rest of the roster, right? But the bottom line is that their two 30-plus-year-old stars do not look capable of being labeled with the word star.
Yeah. You wonder if McCain, not Gary McClain, if McCain, if he has them thinking differently. He has me thinking differently. Before, Embiid was your best hope and was really your only hope, right? Tyler, I had said this, I don't know how many times, where your best possible way to win a championship, and it's not likely at all, but the best possible way to win a championship is still with Joel Embiid. He needs to get it, and maybe there's a veteran presence guy like a Jimmy Butler that comes in and says, hey, here's how you win, brother. You believe in me. I gotcha. You believe in me, I'll believe in you. And everything clicks, and they go on this magical run. That was the way to do it. Embiid's got the talent to do it, but that's the way to do it. And you surround them with guys, they play great defense, and they're all playing for each other. They're all tugging in the same direction. It doesn't feel like that we're ever getting there right now.
You know, I think that you said something, and I have to disagree with it because it still has to be held in the metric of the conversation. You said you're done talking about the talent of Joel Embiid. I don't think that can ever go away. And the reason I don't think that can ever go away is because that will always be the overhang of whether they decide to make a move in the future or not to move away from Joel Embiid. Because when you look at the pure skill set of Joel Embiid, when he is healthy, he is a top, what would you say, 3, 5 player in the NBA, right? I don't think you're going much further than that to get to where you want to go with that type of conversation. Here's the issue. The problem, and you brought this up earlier too, winning masks things. And for a long time, even though the Sixers have been putrid in the postseason and have a litany of postseason issues that we could have a 17 shows about that have nothing to do with the locker room stuff, they have had success, right? They've been a sustainably good team who has been a 50-plus win team more times than not. And yes, I know people are going to go, that doesn't mean that they're a good team. That just means they're a good regular season team. But they've been sustainably good, and they've gone to the playoffs, and they've gone to the second round more times than not. So those things in and of themselves kind of mask any type of underlying locker room issues. And whether that be a player who is perceived to be lazy, or a player who is perceived to be late, or a player that maybe just the team doesn't like. We've all worked with people we don't like before. All right, you do it because you're a professional, and you do it because it's your job. That being said, those things get covered up. John, if you and I did not, mesh well together, and our numbers were great, nobody would say a word, right? If you and I didn't, it's working. If you and I didn't mesh well together, and we were having 4 people watch the show, there would be internal conversations about it's time to make a decision on these 2 guys, and I think that is what a lot of people are talking about today.
But here's where I disagree with you and your disagreement with me. Isn't it clear the 76ers have had enough and they're done with the talent? Because the whole reason you keep doing this is you realize how good of a player he is, right? I'm just kind of taking the cue from the 76ers. Isn't it clear by putting this out there that this is a change or we're moving on, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that today. And I've not thought that in years past. I think that they would put up with some of the underlying nonsense or however they perceive it because they're perpetually a good team. He's one of the league's best players. They are having all of these other internal issues with Ben Simmons, with James Harden, with firing Brett Brown and hiring Doc Rivers, firing Doc Rivers and hiring Nick Nurse. I think there was a lot of the Colangelo stuff in and of itself is another conversation. I think now is the point where the Sixers have finally, as you use the appropriate, moniker, like have come to a crossroads.
Right.
Everything else has kind of allowed this to be back burner. And I think the largest thing is that they've sustainably won, at least in the regular season. Now that they're 2-11 and things just don't look good, I think that's when this all comes to a head.
Yep. If they're 11-2 or 7-4 or 6-5, and the same things are happening, I don't think the story comes out because they're 6-5 and they'll get there or whatever. They're 2-11. The season looks like it's turning into a complete disaster, and rightfully so. They hold a team meeting. The veteran calls the meeting. The young star Tyrese Maxey, who, if Lowry says something or somebody else says something, maybe it's not heard. Hopefully it's heard with Joel Embiid. We'll talk to Devon Givens coming up here in 4 minutes or so here on Philly with Jon Marks. But let's talk about my guys over at Glad Hair Restoration. That's right. Well, it's not even like I say my guys. I mean, a lot of the hair team are a bunch of my ladies over there at Glad Hair Restoration. But now part of the Morgenstern Center under the direction of renowned plastic surgeon Dr. Ken Morgenstern, who I met with last week, and he's amazing. They run the best hair business in the business, I guess you could say. So I had hair restoration. Maybe you're at a stage of hair loss where you don't need hair restoration. That's the great thing when you meet with their hair team, when you set up the one-on-one consultation, you're not going in there and they're being like, oh, hey, how you doing? Yup, you need hair restoration. Because not everybody does. There's so many different alternatives out there. Maybe you're not there. Maybe you're just thinning and shedding and you want to stop the hair loss where it is right now. Lot of technology out there right now. PRP and stem cell restoration, vitamin supplementation, very popular and effective. A treatment called TED that I put out on my my Instagram yesterday, where it's great, especially in this area of the head, of stopping the thinning and the shedding. Telling you, best in the business, most success, most experience. That's Glatt Hair, and it's not just about restoration; it's about innovation. Their breakthrough treatments dramatically change your hair. Change your hair, change your life. Bald's now optional. Call them, one-on-one consultation. It's free. And yeah, they'll give you their honest feedback. 610-980-4000. 610-980-4000. Or Glatt Hair, that's G-L-A-T, hair, MCTR.com. GlattHairMCTR.com. All right, Bet Parks. Even if your team doesn't score, there's always another way to win on the Bet Parks app. Playing all your favorite casino games like blackjack, craps, poker, roulette, and hot online slots like Peaky Blinders and Breaking Bad. That's right. Every weekend, BetParks presents Double the Spread, a boost on one select pro football game. So check the BetParks app every Friday afternoon, and they'll give you double the spread game. Pro Hoops tonight. Yep, Philly is a 3.5-point road favorite at Memphis. Let me just say this. This is the biggest lock of the year, and I know Jon Morant's not playing, but still, the odds makers are telling you they expect a response game from the 76ers. I would take them. Philly minus 3.5, and you can bet more than the score. Player points, rebounds, assists, and more. And then Pro Football Sunday night, the Birds 3-point favorites in Los Angeles. And again, with football. Bet touchdowns, passing, rush yards, interceptions, and more. And new users download the BetParks online casino and sportsbook app. Up to $1,000 casino bonus back if you're down in the first 24 hours. You can play all your favorite casino games with a live dealer right on your phone for real, and for real money. Casino bonus must be wagered. See betparks.com for details. Must be 21 and in PA, New Jersey, Michigan, Maryland, or Ohio. Gambling problem. Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, there you go. Devon's going to do it. Devon's here. So yesterday, PHLY Sixers got lucky with some breaking news that came out right before the guys went on the air. And Devon Givens joins us right now. Devon.
Hey, man. Well, since you're talking about Glatt, they have a lot of people pulling their hair out through these first 13 games. So
why did I think of that?
Some business, man. They're going to get some business, man, for sure.
Can I use that in tomorrow's read?
Please do, Johnny. Please do. Please do.
All right, so
tomorrow they might have a win under their belt, though. So you might want to change that up a little bit.
I agree with you. I think they win tonight. Right? I mean, the 3.5 point favorites at Memphis. I know Morant's not going to play, but still, the way they've been playing, they should be underdogs against anybody. But
and it's the second night of a back-to-back. Memphis lost last night.
They lost last night. Yep. All right. So when I think of you as a 76er, I'll say personality, because you're like Kyle's the reporter, Derek's the numbers guy, and then you're the 76ers guy. You did pre and post for many years on the Fanatic. You've been around this team. Even before we had the rights at the Fanatic, you were the 76er guy. Since I've known you, you were the 76er guy, right? And I would consider you a positive 76er person, right? Like I get very emotional and I can be negative based on what's happening with the team, right? But you always, like, you give criticism and everything else, but you're objective. And I think ultimately you would rather be positive than negative on the 76ers, which is why I love you, because we need that. We need some positivity in this town. How do you feel about all this? Like, where are you right now with what we found out from yesterday? How do you feel about Joel Embiid going forward?
Well, it's not as positive, of course, as you would imagine, because of how things have gone. And when we were talking last week, you and I brought up the fact that they were only 3 games back of fourth place in the Eastern Conference, and right now I believe they're still only about 4 or 5, maybe even no more than 6 games. I didn't check the standings after last night's action, but it's not good. Even I, as you said, try to look for some of the positives. We already know what those are. Jared McCain and a little bit of sprinkling, a little bit of Gershon Yabusele, and that's it. And the fact that Tyrese Maxey is also coming back. But after all of this, number one, it needed to happen after a game like that. You were up 19 points, Johnny, in that game. And that was one, as you said, tonight is a lock for you because of the number in the second night of a back-to-back for the Memphis Grizzlies. That one, when we were watching the game in the office and we're sitting there seeing them take this 19-point lead against the Miami Heat, we said, okay, they figured some things out. Everything is working out. The 19-point lead has been built. You know Miami's going to make a run. They just have to stave off that run, make their own run again to extend it back to the double digits. That did not happen. The third quarter was awful. They scored 16 points, tying Tyler Hero for the high of the quarter. 16-16, Tyler Hero, even the numbers against them. So after the game, it had to happen, and I'm glad it happened. It's unfortunate that we're in this space 13 games in, but it had to happen. And as I said on the show, Johnny, after the game, I sat there for a second and looked at the broadcast as I was finishing up some of our notes, and I saw Kyle Lowry and Joel Embiid sitting on the end of the bench in an animated discussion. Not that they were yelling at each other in a about to get into a fight kind of way. It was more of, this is unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Everybody else is walking back to the locker room. Those 2 guys are sitting on the bench and they're talking this out. And then we find out that they were in the locker room because of a players only meeting. Well, not a players only meeting, but a team meeting. Nick Nurse spoke up, team spoke up, and all that. So there's nothing positive to really discuss outside of Jared McCain of what this team is right now. And Joel Embiid, as injured as he may be, if you're a star like you are, a superstar like you are, and you're getting yourself back into it, there are ways to go about it without looking like the way that he did. And then you could see the body language that always gets in the way and that type of stuff. And that can zap the energy of any team when it just is, right? It doesn't matter if it's sports or if it's in a normal workplace, that can zap the energy. And not only did he zap the energy of his teammates, and that meeting had to happen, the energy of the fan base, all of us who watch the team and look at the team the way that we all do, Johnny, it zapped the energy of everyone else too. And now they have to bring that back. I don't know how they're going to do it. It starts tonight, as you mentioned, as a favorite on the road against a Memphis team that is shorthanded. But the energy has been zapped, and they have to figure it out. And it needed to start, number one, with that team meeting. Step number 2 is going out there and winning the game.
Yeah. Based on what you've heard previously, and you look at Embiid's stats, man, he's averaging over 30 every year. He's averaging over 10 rebounds. He's won the MVP. We know the type of player that he is when it's good Embiid. But based on what you've heard, what is being brought up in the team meeting is that Joel Embiid is quote late for everything, right? Has this been a problem previously? We've questioned we've questioned the work ethic, getting out of shape, the Chick-fil-A stuff or whatever. But is this something that's been happening more than just this year? Is this something that's been a problem with Joel Embiid?
Yes, but it has been better over the last couple of years. I don't know why why it's cropped up again this particular season. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. But yes, in the past it has been. And look, this has been an organizational thing too. You know, like you said, the Chick-fil-A thing, the weight gain. If you remember the Keith Pompey story years ago when he wasn't playing, and remember he ballooned to reportedly by Keith 300 pounds. And he took offense to that. Joel Embiid did, because who wants to be looked at as, all right, you're this guy who's in great shape, even though you're not playing, but someone says that you're now over 300 pounds. So he got his back up about that. But Keith was right, because he wasn't the only one after you find out that was like, yeah, this guy did that. But yes, years and years ago, this was the problem. John, you remember even when he wasn't himself at that time, when he got into he had to be sent home from Utah because of the altercation he had with a staff member back then. So we remember all these things, lateness. And again, it's not just him, it's an organizational thing. I remember stories being told to me years ago about how Nerlens Noel, who wasn't playing yet, was late all the time. He had to be fined because he was late all the time, holding up the team plane because he's late all the time, holding up the team bus all the time. So it's something that they allowed to happen. He has gotten better at it, but it has gotten to a point again where Tyrese Maxey felt the need to say this in the meeting reported by Shams, and that can't happen. As the leader of this team, everything that he talked about after the season, where he made it very clear to tell all of us that he spoke to Daryl Morey after they lost in the playoffs and said, this can't happen. I need to be better. Well, if you need to be better, it shouldn't be in the spot once again where Tyrese Maxey is telling you about your tardiness 13 games into the season. It's one thing to be battling back from an injury and trying to get yourself into game shape because of that injury, and the mental side, battling that as well. But you shouldn't have to have your 24-year-old all-star, who is like your little brother, tell you what you need to do. Right.
And he's the only one that can really say it. After speaking with some people and maybe some people with the team, does this feel like to you a last-ditch effort of almost like with Allen Iverson when they almost traded him to Detroit many years ago, and he responded with, they went to the NBA Finals that year, and then he kind of crept back into some of those old habits. But after talking with people, does this feel like listen, like either you have to change or it's time to move on? Is this kind of the last edict to Joel Embiid? Because they've never aired him, and I feel like this came from the Sixers. Shams got this from the Sixers. Does this feel like that because he's being hung out like wet laundry, man? Is this kind of the last effort by the Sixers to be like, hey, you got to change or we're moving on?
Possibly. And the one beauty of that, for him at least too, Johnny, is that he can't be traded until next season, in the offseason. He can't be traded this year during the season because of his new contract extension. So it's not as if this could come up in February where we're hearing discussions about him being moved to, pick your club. But this possibly, it could be. But I'd imagine it's going to take a lot for that to happen, even something like this. And when you even think about it too, man, just bringing in Paul George. You brought Paul George in here, not just for Tyrese Maxey, but for the sole reason of giving Joel Embiid help. And because of that, I would push back and say, at least answer your question right now and say, maybe. I would lean more towards no, but maybe, of course, because we've seen him get his act together. And when he's gotten his act together, we know what it looks like when he's himself. He's an MVP candidate, and he's the best player on the floor many nights against whomever they're playing, including in the playoffs.
No, I mean, I agree, but if he doesn't respond and he's mopey Embiid, and we've seen him be mopey Embiid, if he doesn't respond, here's what I would predict happens. Because even without Joel Embiid, they can win around in the playoffs if they construct their team with Embiid not being here. It's one thing this year when you have Embiid, but you can build a team that can win a round in the playoffs and then lose, because that's what Joel Embiid's been. I'm tired of, but like you had Paul George and you had this player and you had that player. Like at some point, the elephant in the room is Joel Embiid's not good enough as the best player on this team. And it ain't working. And it's time to move on. And you wonder if the Sixers are saying, hey, we hope he responds. I'm sure the Sixers hope he responds. Of course you would want to. Right? But if he doesn't, and they lose in the playoffs again, the finger is now going to be pointed at Joel Embiid. And how does he handle it? he's already told the city and the fans, like, be careful how you talk about me. Because
Right.
once he decides he wants to be gone, and you have the Marcus Hayes piece, and he moped around after that. But for the first time, I think the finger in the bullseye could be really pointing to Joel Embiid. And like if they fail again, he may decide he wants to be gone. And I'll say this, Devon, this is the last year. If he improves and they make a run, they don't have to win a title. I'm not looking at the Sixers to win a title this year. I think they can. But if I see a different player and a different attitude, then I would consider bringing him back. But at this point, I think it's time to move on.
Yeah, I'm not there yet, and just because, and you're fair to think like that, because as you said, look at what we've dealt with in the city and watching this team and evaluating this team and seeing exactly how he plays in these big moments. And yeah, if they do get to the postseason and he underperforms once again, and you hear about all that stuff, you know those conversations are going to pop up, and they probably should after 8 years of getting to the postseason and nothing happening past the second round. You can understand why they might want to look to move on. And even with him, though, he has to play well in order for his value to be normally what we believe Joel Embiid's value to be, because right now it's at rock bottom. I mean, is anybody going to trade for him right now and give you exactly what you feel? And you know how Daryl Morey works. Let's go back to the Harden and even the Ben Simmons sagas. He's not trading anybody unless he's getting exactly what he feels the player is worth back. So if that is not something that he believes he's going to get in a deal for Joel Embiid in the offseason, this could push all the way to the start of training camp, the start of the season, like it did with James Harden, simply because Embiid and the Sixers were ousted in the postseason, didn't look very good. He didn't look good individually, and his trade value is very, very low. So that's how I would look at it. Right now, I'm not there with you, but I would agree with you that if he doesn't, those conversations would come up again. I'm personally not ready to do it, but yeah, I am. He frustrates me in this way too, where I'm like, all right, enough is enough. It's time. It's time.
Devon Givens, you doing pre and post tonight, dude?
Yeah, we have
pre and post night?
8:00 game tonight. So it's 7:30 pregame, post game following. And as you said, no Ja Morant, no Zach Edey because of injuries that they have sustained. We'll see if Desmond Bane plays tonight because he's basically just coming back from his injury, second night of a back-to-back. We'll see what they look like with Jaren Jackson as the lead guy, and see what the Sixers can do against this Memphis Grizzlies team. Hopefully we get to see the big three for the first time, Johnny.
Joel's going to have to talk after the game, which should be really interesting. Will he talk today? Will they have a shoot-around where he talks today? Nick Nurse speak today?
Yeah, he'll be the only one to speak. So if he speaks, you know he's going to be asked about the team meeting and what came out of it. Yeah. And of course the report of Shams and what Shams had to say.
Do you think the Sixers designed this to be like after it happened, they said, let's leak it? Nick Nurse came right out and said, sorry for the holdup. We were for an hour. We had a team meeting. I'm not going to talk about it. And then Shams has it out the next day. To me, this seems like a good way for the 76ers to get this out there. If that's the case, I mean, because the other place it could be coming from is Clutch, who represents Shams and Tyrese Maxey, and that would be a really bad look for
Nurse and Tyrese Maxey. Yeah.
So that would be a really bad. Like if you want to have internal conflict, have Clutch Sports leaking out that Joel Embiid's showing up late to everything and Tyrese Maxey's the savior. To me, this feels like it came from the Sixers for good reason.
Yeah, I would agree, and the good reason is to get it out there again to put some of that pressure back on Joel Embiid. They had his back for the Marcus Hayes thing. They had his back in general about not starting the season. Everything. And in this particular one, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of people that this could have come from. That's one candidate, the agency, of course, of putting it out there. And we know Shams' relationship with Clutch as well. So yeah, it makes sense.
There he is, Devon Givens. All right, buddy. Thank you. Go Sixers. And by the way, this could be the turning point of the season. And honestly, I think he responds. I think he responds in a positive way. And this team starts clicking a little bit here. Let's go.
Well, look, they have Brooklyn on Friday at home. They have the Clippers on Sunday at home. And they have Houston next week for, I think it's the 3-game homestand in Houston wraps that up. These are winnable games, Johnny, especially if you have 2 of the 3 on the floor at all times. These are winnable games. They should be in these games. They should pull a game or 2 out of these. I think the guys threw at me 8-game stretch. Can they go 500? Can they go 4-4? Or can they go 5-3? They should be able to.
They should have won some of these games that they were just playing in too. So
exactly right.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see, man.
All right, D. Appreciate it, buddy.
Johnny, see you later.
All right, there he is. Catch him on the pregame and the postgame, along with Kyle and Derek Bodner. Unbelievable coverage. They were great yesterday on it. All right, coming up, headlines with Tyler Azuli and some Philly stuff. Looks like they're determined to add a starting pitcher. We'll tell you about that coming up next on Philly with Jon Marks. Don't go anywhere. Let's talk about. That's right, Rite Aid. So I was saving I got a couple messages saying like, hey, yesterday you were sick. Do you have strep throat? Yep, I do. I have strep throat. Got the strep test yesterday, positive for strep throat. I was correct. I know the symptoms, right? So guess where I was at about 10:45 yesterday? Yep, my local Rite Aid, the Rite Aid in Royersford, picking up my script. Thank you very much. Got 3 doses of penicillin in me by going on the air today. But listen, how about the flu shot? Don't miss the big game. Or listen, we have Thanksgiving coming up next week. Get a flu shot at Rite Aid. And while at your pharmacy, look at the other vaccines, right? Stay up to date on all of them. Ask your pharmacist for a review or recommendations. The CDC recommends getting a flu shot every year. Person's immune protection from vaccination declines over time. You can protect yourself against the flu. So get your annual flu shot at Rite Aid today. And with your child, it reduces the risk of life-threatening influenza by 75%. Let's get your whole family over there because flu viruses are constantly changing. Get your annual flu shot. It's formulated every year to protect you against the expected flu strains. And while you're at the pharmacy, do what I do. Stock up on cough, cold, and flu, allergy essentials. Rite Aid has what you need to get through the season. Just walk into your local Rite Aid or schedule at riteaid.com. State, age, and health restrictions apply. Ask your Rite Aid pharmacist for all the details. All right, Ace Hardware Home Services. For all the people out there that can't do anything, like me, if you have a leaky pipe, all right, if you have heating issue, turn the heater on. You're like, all right, I finally got to turn the heater on. Nope, it's not working. Ace Hardware Home Services keeps your home humming all year long. Plumbing, heating, cooling, Ace Hardware Home Services. They have the trusted pros to keep your home going. All right, so here's what you do. Go to the website. They have experience. They have local plumbers and techs that handle everything from repair and seasonal maintenance to installation and upgrades. And you're doing it under the Ace brand, right? So the power of the Ace brand, striving to be the best, most trusted provider of home preservation services, residential maintenance, installation, home repair are available. That includes everything that we talked about with trusted advisors and options that are best suited for your home and budget. Emergency services are available when you need them the most. Free estimates on everything, including equipment installation and replacement. Again, with trusted advisors. So you don't have a guy to do that. You don't have a plumber. You don't have an electrician. Ace Hardware Home Services is serving your community. They're dedicated to keeping you comfortable in your home. AceHardwareHomeServices.com to get your next project started now. There we go. All right. It's been a lot of fun talking about the 76ers today. But we skipped headlines a little bit earlier in the show because we were rolling. So let's get to headlines with our own Tyler Zerly. What's up, Tyler?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm trying to do about a million things at once here, trying to get the show. No, you're good. We just trying to log the show while doing this. So yes, let's get to our headlines. And I know you brought up our sponsor, our friends over at Glad Hair Restoration earlier, so thank you for that. Let's get to some of the headlines. You brought up the Sixers. We'll start there. Yes, they do play tonight. They're in Memphis to take on the Grizzlies. As you mentioned, no Jon Marks for the Grizzlies. 2-11 for the Sixers. They are 3.5 point favorites.
Yes.
Over Memphis, who are 8-7, coming off a loss yesterday. As Devon mentioned, this will be the second night of a back-to-back for them. They lose 122 to 110, to the Denver Nuggets yesterday. That comes just a couple of days ago after they beat the Denver Nuggets at home 105-90. They have, however, lost 3 of their last 4 heading into this one.
Yeah, I was surprised to see the line, and you're like, all right, Morant's out. Devon mentioned Edey's also not playing. I think that this is a get-right game for the 76ers. They have a couple games at home. So let's hope. I mean, I think if there's ever going to be a time this year to get it together, it starts tonight.
So about the same time, 7:30 start today. The Flyers will take on the Carolina Hurricanes in this one. Couple of things of note for the Flyers, as noted by Charlie O'Connor, who you can check out, of course, on the PHLY Flyers podcast. Cam York was on the ice in a normal jersey yesterday at Flyers practice. Jamie Drysdale was in a non-contact jersey. And he mentions that Travis Sanheim is the only unexpected absence. But Charlie said he's told that it's more due to workload than it is to injury. Of course, no Emil Andre or Sam Ersson at practice yesterday either.
All right. There you go. What was the other? Oh, Joe Douglas got whacked yesterday.
Yeah, Joe Douglas gets fired by the New York Jets. So now in the span of 8 weeks, they have fired their GM, they fired their head coach, and yet the 40-year-old quarterback who stinks at quarterback continues to run the team.
I don't know if you saw this. Woody Johnson, according to now stories are, of course, coming out all over the place. Woody Johnson wanted to bench Aaron Rodgers after they lost to Denver. But Joe Douglas and the coaches said, no, we're not benching Aaron Rodgers.
Sure.
If that's true, and I don't have any reason not to believe it's true, because apparently this guy's the worst owner in sports now. Like, what would he think benching Aaron Rodgers is going to do? Help Aaron Rodgers, like with Joel Embiid. Sixers send the message to Joel Embiid by having Tyrese Maxey have a team meeting, and then they give it to Shams. Now it's public that Joel Embiid's late. And everything, right? You're hoping for a response. I think we already know what Aaron Rodgers' response would be if they benched him.
Bleep you.
Yeah, it would be like, okay, I'm shutting down.
Couple other quick stories for you. Speaking about firings, maybe an interesting one here, a little bit, maybe even surprising. Boston Bruins have fired their head coach Jim Montgomery.
Saw that.
Slow start for them, just 8-9-3 this season. But Montgomery in his 3 seasons as the Bruins head coach was 120. 41 and 23. That is a point percentage of 71.5% in his 3 seasons. They made the playoffs twice. Both times they lose to the Florida Panthers. They had the best statistical in terms of point season in the regular season in the history of the NHL in 2023. So after a little bit of a slow start, the NHL continues to churn coaches. Now, by the way, all 3 coaches from the 2023 finalist for head coach of the year in the NHL have been fired by their respective teams.
Damn, that's crazy. Yeah, hockey definitely is different with the coaches, right? Like you can get a Peter Laviolette that has the Flyers playing great, and then 2 years later the team's like, oh, well, screw this guy. They seem to really wear on the players and the organization. I listen to Boston sports radio quite a bit. So I know Montgomery, they had the best record ever. I think they had the most points ever 2 seasons ago.
Points, yep.
And didn't they lose in the first round of the playoffs that year?
They lost to Florida that year, correct?
Yeah, they lost to Florida 2 years in a row.
2 years in a row.
So really it wasn't unexpected because that was kind of when they had a slow start to the season. But still, when you look what's happened with the Flyers and you look at the success the Bruins have had, they're also like a perennial cup team. So it's a little bit different with like, hey, we think our roster is the reason why we're winning cups. And if it's not working with a coach, we'll bring another guy in.
Last story for you real quick before we head to our final piece of conversation. The latest college football playoff bracket has come out. Boise State jumps into the bye territory. They have usurped BYU. BYU lost this past weekend, so they're now 9-1. They fall all the way to 12. Boise State is now jumped into the bye bracket along with Oregon, who is projected to win the Big Ten, Miami, who is projected to win the ACC, and Texas, who is projected to win the SEC. Now, the 5, 6, 7, 8 belongs predominantly to the Big Ten. Ohio State is the 5, Penn State is the 6, Indiana the 7. Notre Dame rounds out the top 8 in this one. The couple of teams sitting on the outside looking in. SMU, a little bit surprising that they continue to roll, and I don't know how you feel about it, John, and we can talk more about it as it goes. I think SMU is going to end up beating Miami in the ACC championship game if they both get there. but SMU's kind of on the outside looking in currently. And again, one of the biggest fallers was BYU. They fell all the way from 6 to 14.
Yeah, it'll be a fascinating playoff for sure.
And by the way, that 6 to 14 is in the rankings, not in the projected playoff.
Depending on what conference you're in or whatever you
Correct.
get. Yeah, so the rankings aren't just 1 through 12. All right, thank you, Tyler. I appreciate it. The Phillies, I saw this yesterday. And ESPN does one of these things where they're like, okay, we asked, in this case, it was 18 MLB executives and insiders regarding the offseason. And I'll give you my Phillies takeaway from them, okay? They're in on a starting pitcher. So they asked who will land Garrett Crochet if the White Sox trade him this winter. And the Mets, Braves, and Orioles, and the Phillies. So Mets, five people said the Mets, Braves 4, Orioles 3, Phillies 2. So it's been well publicized that the Phillies are in on them. It's a matter of whether they can get them. And it's interesting, only one person said the Dodgers. So where there's smoke, there's fire. I believe they're interested in them. And then another one, which surprised me a little bit. And it asked about Schnell. It said, who will be the top 3 free agent aces with MLB? Where will the top 3 free agent aces with MLB experience sign? And they say Blake Snell. 7 said the Giants, re-sign with the Giants. 4 said the Phillies. Blake Snell is a really good pitcher. So more on that in a second. Some of the other takeaways from it. One insider has the Phillies trading JT Realmuto. It said, who is another top trade candidate? And one person said JT Realmuto, which I find very, very interesting. That's even put out, that's even being mentioned out there as something that at least one person was thinking about of the 18. So, Tyler, you're the producer and host of the PHLY Phillies show. The Phillies are in on a starting pitcher. If the Phillies are in on a starting pitcher, whether it's Snell or it's Crochet or somebody else, that's clearly considered an upgrade in the rotation. They would be the number 2 starter behind Zach Wheeler, and they may transition to being the number 1 starter depending in the future. That means there's got to be an odd guy out, right? And that would be Ranger Suarez. So in this scenario, they get one of these 2 and they trade Ranger and they get outfield help or they get a reliever. If they can't make one of these moves, you bring Ranger back and he's your 4th starter, your 3rd starter, and he's a free agent after this season and you probably don't re-sign him. Is that your read on the situation here?
So it's interesting because I don't know what their willingness to spend money this offseason is going to be. And we've kind of indicated that to me, it feels like their path to bringing in a player, especially an upper echelon player, is going to be via the trade market. Just because of the fact that, yes, you can consider the fact that, JT Realmuto's contract comes off the books this year. Schwarber's comes off the books this year. Castellanos is in 2 years. But then you also inversely have to consider, do you bring Ranger Suarez back? He's up for a contract at the end of the 2025 season. Alec Boehm is up for a contract at the end of the 2026 season. Zach Wheeler's extension kicks in this year. He's going to get up to almost $40 million, and he will be over $40 million at some point throughout his contract extension. I'm not sure how much money they're going to be willing to invest in the free agent pool when it comes to starting pitching. And so that, to me, tells me Snell is surprising to hear because I think he's probably going to command upwards of $25 million a season. Kind of made a mistake last year a little bit, signing that late deal with the Giants, but I guess ended up paying off in a sense because he was able to opt out of his deal, and now he's back into being a free agent. I think that they're going to get a multi-year extension or a multi-year deal.
But the reason why he did that was because there wasn't the market. They overplayed their hand last year, as a lot of Boras clients did.
Correct. I think Scott Boras miscalculated last year and really hindered some of his clients between Snell and Jordan Montgomery specifically. Now, Snell rebounded and pitched well after he bounced back from the slow start. Montgomery did not pitch well. Montgomery was almost forced to opt in to his second year with the Diamondbacks because he was not going to get that on the open market.
Money, yeah.
Snell probably will get close to that. So if Snell has, I want to just definitively check as to what his opt-in was for next year. Next year it would have been $38 million for one season. Now, he's not going to get $38 million per year, but he might get a 5-year deal where it's worth $150 million total. So I'm not so sure the Phillies are going to be that interested in a 5-year, $150 million deal for a starter, even if he is a top end of the line guy.
He ain't getting that. There's too much starting pitching on the market. He ain't getting that. He like in my opinion, I think he gets a shorter term deal. See, like what you're seeing with the Phillies is they have options. If Snell's market is what it was like last year, all right, we'll give you 3 years for $80 million. They'll do a short-term deal on Snell. And by the way, I don't know if he's a good match for this city. Well, he's a good pitcher, no question about it. He's a 2-time Cy Young Award winner. Doesn't give you a ton of innings. He wouldn't pitch at the end of last year because the Giants were eliminated from the playoffs. That's pretty interesting. But I don't know if and he's boys with Bryce Harper. I don't know if he's a good fit for Philadelphia. If you come out and you start slow and you have a certain attitude about it, man, we can shut you down.
So here's the thing with Blake Snell. The stuff is electric. We know it. We know it to be there. 145 strikeouts and 104 innings pitched last year. 2-time Cy Young winner. One of 7 guys in the history of baseball to do it in both leagues. Like, there is clearly merit to Blake Snell being a high-end starter. But I can see it now. And when you bring up maybe he's not a match for this city, what I think you're getting at is the hoagie mouth Phillies fan. Well, he only pitches 5 innings. Back in my day, guys would go 42 innings a week.
Any mouths off at fans.
And I think you're going to get a lot of people who look at the fact that he made 20 starts last year and pitched 104 innings. That's just over five innings a start. Last year, in a Cy Young candidate winning season, 180 innings in 32 starts. You're going to see a lot of fans in Philadelphia get very mouthy about a guy who statistically keeps you in ball games almost every time he takes the mound.
Could you imagine,
because he doesn't throw enough innings?
Could you imagine some athletes that are whatever sport outside of Philadelphia, if they received the same kind of feedback and criticism that Aaron Nola gets in Philadelphia? And being here every day, I understand it. I've been accused of being negative on Nola, but when you look at him as a pitcher, he's a really good pitcher. He's good. He's one of the best starters that, if not the best starter that the Phillies have ever drafted.
Yeah, I mean, you think about the words that get used about Aaron Nola. It's workhorse. It's resilient. It's, it just guy goes out there and throws every 5th day. He hasn't missed a start in
But people legitimately, I don't think, and I can be guilty of this sometimes. I don't think that I am appreciative of Aaron Nola as maybe I should be. Right? I don't think Snell handles that type of criticism that Nola will get after a start, and he'll go on social media and see it and get pissed. Aaron Nola, you don't know if he won or lost based on his mannerisms and how he reacts to things. So, all right, so I think here's where I think Snell's a possibility. If his market's not big, if it's not 5, if it's 5 for 150, there's no way they're doing that. If it's 3 for 85, maybe they do it. And if it's 3 for 85, here's how they figure it out. They move Ranger Suarez, who's going to make $11 million. And here's where I think JT comes into play. There's obviously a team, and I hadn't thought about which team. There's obviously a team that would like JT Realmuto on a 1-year contract. He's making $23 million a year. Now, who's going to catch for the Phillies? They sign a free agent guy to a 1-year, $5 million contract. They worry less about offense and more about being behind the plate. Maybe he has a little bit of pop. And that's how you're able to come up with $18 million. I don't think it's likely. But if you're the Phillies, have you decided whether or not JT Realmuto is coming back after his contract year? Because he's making $23 million a year. How much is he making as a 34-year-old catcher? He's going to be 34 next year. He's going to play the entire season at 34 years old. So is JT coming back? I think JT is a lower percentage chance of, well, here's how we can come up with some money. And it makes sense. Your thoughts, Tyler?
So I'm thinking about the free agent catchers that are currently available. The only 2 that I would have any interest in at all, especially to be nearly an everyday catcher, are Kyle Higashioka, who I don't particularly love, but I think there's at least merit to it, and Elias Diaz, who was very, very good with the Rockies last year, and then was weirdly released, and he caught a handful of games with San Diego. But I think that your options are so unbelievably limited in that capacity. I'm not giving up a year, even for a declining JT whose offense is declining.
With knee injuries.
There's no doubt about it. He's only probably going to catch about 110 to 120 games this year as opposed to his typical like 135-ish, 140. And that's okay with me because I still believe the defensive value is there. Plus, he's got a little bit of pop still in the bat. Like the list of free agents that are available doesn't entice me nearly enough to even remotely consider that conversation, because then your only other alternative is a guy in like Rafael Marchand being an everyday catcher who can't stay healthy either. And
Correct.
Just like the alternatives to that conversation are so much worse. Even with a declining offensive productivity from JT Realmuto, I don't love any of those possibilities currently.
Not likely, but Marchand and another veteran would make a lot of sense splitting the time. And by the way, I didn't say thank you to everybody watching on TV. That probably doesn't matter at this point. But I don't think it's likely. But would I be okay if they moved JT and got help at another position? And they're more or less saying like, yeah, we don't know about signing him long term. I mean, what's he going to get if he stays in Philly on a new contract? So you're getting a declining player who's declining offensively. He's still excellent defensively. I have heard questions of whether or not he calls a good game, and if there aren't other catchers that are out there that maybe calls a better game. See, with the catcher position for me, I don't mind a guy that bats 210 if he has 12 home runs, but he calls a great game and guys like throwing to him. And I question right now with his declining offensive game, like what made JT special obviously was his defensive skills, but also he had pop in the bat. Yeah, if he's a first baseman, how good is JT Realmuto? He's not. So the talk of moving him out of catcher didn't make sense, or moving him to DH didn't make sense. He doesn't have bat for it. But so that makes, like, again, I don't expect it to happen, but it was interesting that they put that out there. Last thing here, Soto. No one voted for Soto going to Philly. And even though we keep getting that put out there and in different ways, and look at the wording of how the stuff's put out there, where it's like, oh, the Phillies always are interested in winning and making a big move. Like, all right, but you have no intelligence that the Phillies are actually willing to spend $500 or $600 million on Juan Soto.
Yeah, I don't think that. I think we've been pretty steadfast in saying that. I don't think it's a they're going to have the conversation, because of course they're going to have the conversation, and they're going to have him over, and he's going to sit with the front office and the ownership group, and they're going to talk, and they're going to leave, and he's going to say thank you so much. And I think that's probably the end of the conversation.
Probably. All right, there you go. And again, you wish that MLB was more like the NFL, because now moves would be happening right now, and it's very much it plays out.
What do you mean?
December.
Moves have happened. There's been some free agents that have signed.
Such as?
I think
exactly. You're Googling.
I think Travis d'Arnaud signed a contract.
Yes, exactly.
I think Austin Hedges re-signed in Cleveland.
I think it's a difficult thing to make teams have early signings. It's like in the NBA. If teams want to rest their star players, you can try to tell them that they can't, but like how can you tell them? It's difficult to legislate. So the Bryce Harper signed in spring training. Jake Arrieta signed in spring training. Blake Snell. He went very late last year, signing with the Giants. So I would expect a lot of this to continue to happen. But there's going to be a lot of things going on with the Phillies. I'm fascinated with what Dave Dombrowski and company end up doing over the course of the offseason. All right, we'll be back tomorrow at 8 a.m. Shout out to everybody, the Mad Chatters that watch live on YouTube every single morning. By the way, a week from today, we will be doing our show live from the Reading Terminal Market. Anthony will be there. We're on a different time. We'll be on after Ant. All the shows are going to be there. Philly show, 76er show, I think the Eagles show as well. But everybody's going to be out there at the Reading Terminal Market. So if you like to, or you're in the city, or you like to make a stop at the Reading Terminal, getting ready for Thanksgiving, they have everything for Thanksgiving. They have great desserts, great pies there, which I'll be taking home with me. So that's next Wednesday, day before Thanksgiving, Reading Terminal Market. Love to meet a lot of our listeners and our viewers out there. So if you listen on podcast, you're listening on podcast, or if you haven't listened on podcast before, you can check it out. Just search Philly with Jon Marks or PHLY wherever you find your podcasts. And we'll be back tomorrow at 8 a.m. live. See you.
We all silly like the mayor.